What is up, guys? It's your boy, Mr. Tech Boy. Today I'm going to be talking about if you should wait to buy the iPhone 12s or if it's worth buying this year's iPhone 12. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, this year's iPhone 12 is going to be a complete redesign and it's very exciting. So if you don't know, Apple usually has a 3-year cycle. The iPhone 6, it was redesigned from the iPhone 5S. The 6S, it was an S upgrade, which means only small changes internally, spec bump, yada yada yada. Then there's the 7, which small design changes and some small internal changes. And then the next year is iPhone 10, huge redesign, no home button, Face ID, tons and tons of new features. The iPhone 10s, S upgrade, the 11 Pro, redesign, small redesign. This year, we're obviously getting the iPhone 12, which is going to be a new redesign. It's going to have flat edges, so instead of having the rounded edges like we've had for like 7 years now, we're going to have flat edges. I'm honestly not a fan of flat edges. I have it on my iPhone SE that I used to have as my phone, and the flat edges, they're okay to hold. I think that the rounded edges are more comfortable to hold. It's not a deal breaker because most people are using a case anyway. But if you do like the flat edges, then that's a plus for you. But me, I'm not a big fan of the flat edges anyway. Another thing that we're expecting this year is for the notch to be getting smaller. So the speaker grill will be moved from inside of the notch to the top bezel, which means that the notch is going to be smaller, obviously. So if you don't know what the notch is the little rectangle cutout at the top of the iPhone 10, 10s, and 11. And it houses the Face ID sensors, the earpiece for when you're talking on the phone, and the front camera. The earpiece is what's being moved from the top bezel, so instead of being on the rectangle that is the notch, it's going to be moved up to that top bezel. And this should allow for a smaller notch. This leak comes from John Prosser and a bunch of other sources. Hopefully this comes out to be true. It'd be really cool for the notch to get smaller eventually. Hopefully they can put all of the sensors under the screen, but that's definitely a long ways away. But I'm really excited to hear that Apple's finally going to be making the notch smaller. Again, I don't really care if the notch is getting smaller. In my opinion, considering I have an 11 Pro, it's not really a huge upgrade from an 11 Pro to a 12. You know, you're getting a smaller notch, you're getting the flat edges. The only other real factor that you're getting when you're upgrading to a 12 or 12 Pro is you would get 120 hertz if you were getting the 12 Pro, and Apple seems to have had issues with the 120 hertz, and it doesn't seem like it's happening this year. And Apple was gonna add LTPO displays next year anyway. I don't really know what LTPO stands for, so I have to Google it. It stands for low temperature polycrystalline oxide, which basically means that when the display is viewing a still image, like you're just looking at a photo or you're on your lock screen, the display will decrease from 120 hertz or 60 hertz down to a single hertz, which basically allows it to save battery life when you don't need to be looking at buttery smooth 60 frames per second. You can only be looking at 1 frame per second when you don't need to be on the highest possible number. This allows Apple to save a lot of battery life on the Apple Watch Series 5, which doesn't even have 120 hertz, but it does allow them to save battery, and it allows them to have 120 hertz on the iPad Pro, and it gives it the ability to not lose a lot of battery life when 120 hertz is on. If you know something about Android phones that have 120 hertz, 120 hertz decreases the battery life by a significant margin. LTPO will fix that. So even if Apple does have 120 hertz this year, it won't be LTPO'd 120 hertz. So if it's LTPO'd 120 hertz, then it will basically have the exact same battery life, or slightly worse than 60. But if it's not LTPO 120 hertz, like we're hearing with the iPhone 12, you're gonna take a huge hit on battery life with that 120 hertz option on. So even if Apple does include the 120 hertz, which they may not even include since it's not LTPO, you're still not going to have the best battery life you could get, which is a great reason to wait till next year. if the LTPO 120 hertz comes with the 12s, you're really getting a lot with the 12s, right? If you have, let's say, an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 10 or an iPhone 7 or an iPhone 10s, I definitely think it's worth it to buy the iPhone 12 Pro. You're getting a lot of advantages over your current device. But maybe even if you have a 10s or a 10 and you don't want to take the hit on battery life when you use 120 hertz, or even if you have an 11 Pro like me, it doesn't make sense to even buy a 12. Like, the differences are going to be minuscule. If you're buying a 12 Pro, you're probably from an older generation anyway, or unless you're a tech enthusiast. I probably won't even get the 12s. I'll probably wait to buy an iPhone for a very long time. I'm very happy with my 11 Pro. The battery life is great, the camera is great, the display is amazing. But if you are the type of person that wants an iPhone 12, consider that it may not have 120 hertz, and if it does have 120 hertz, it will take a hit on battery life. If you want those features really bad and you don't want to spend the money on this year's iPhone, then wait. But if you don't really care about those features, or you don't care about them a lot, I say the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 12 Pro are going to be pretty decent. Yeah, that's all for today's video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Link in the description. My name is Mr. Tuckboy, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.